Spike fam, thanks for joining us for this Spike chat. Remember, Spike is here to take care of your customers so you can take care of your business and see your wildest dreams come true. So, with that in mind, we are talking about communication and the customer experience today. We all know if it's one thing we're going to do, it's communicate. So, how can we ensure that we are doing that to the best of our ability? What can we improve upon? And what are some things we can do to help us improve? To that end, we have a fabulous guest today, Shavonne Mariscal from Proclaim Services. She has been a clinician working in the medical practice, treating adults with various speech, language, voice, cognition, and swallowing disorders. So we'll be fortunate to learn even about the physical aspects of our communication, what we need to be keeping in mind as we go about our days and communicate with the hosts of people that we have to. So I'm really looking forward to this. Let's jump right into it.
Hi, I'm Shavonne Mariscal. I'm a speech language pathologist and communication coach in the Space Coast of Florida. Thank you so much, Miss Alex Ann, for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your audience about communication.
I am so happy to have you. I've been looking forward to this. I remember when we met about 2 years ago now, at least, at the We Venture conference. I was so happy to see you there. Someone that looked more like me was fabulous.
Yes, wonderful. Yes.
Yes, and I am really interested in what you do because I think it brings a lot of value to the business world, to the space, and it allows us to see things that we can otherwise overlook. So I'm really happy that we were able to connect, and I'm so happy that we found time to share you with our audience today. So,
Thank you so much.
yes, we're going to be talking about communication and the customer experience. And of course, there's a whole lot of talking happening when you're dealing with customers, whether it's internal to your business, as in your staff, or the persons who are buying from you. So that is something that we can't overlook. We can't talk about it too much, and happy that we have the opportunity today. So before we even get into any advice from you, as a fellow entrepreneur, what has the experience been for you in terms of your journey so far? And what role has the customer experience played for you in your business?
That's a great question because coming from the medical side of things, I'm a clinician first and foremost. I'm a speech pathologist. And when you're working for someone else, so I've worked mostly in skilled nursing facilities and hospitals. So you really don't get that very first interaction with the client or customer. You're really getting in after all these other individuals have given them a perspective of your healthcare organization. So when I decided to open my private practice, it really, my big aha moment was when I was working with a communication coach and they mentioned, well, what's that customer experience from start to finish? And that's something I never had to think about. From that very first time that that client or that client's loved one calls me and says, hey, my loved one needs speech therapy, all the way to discharging them, making sure they have the information they need to possible re-evaluation if they need more speech therapy later. I'm that first impression and I'm that last impression, whereas I never had to think about that before. So that really opened my eyes in the different ways we can communicate with the customer. Again, like going back to what I said before, a lot of times that first interaction is on the phone or through an email. But we know that communication is so much more than just the words we speak. It's our body language, it's our tone, our facial expression. So automatically off the bat, if they're missing a piece of that puzzle, that communication puzzle, then I have to rely so much more heavily on just those words. And, and we'll talk about this later, I'm sure. And sometimes, that can really fall short if you're not really understanding the impact of your word choice or how your tone of your voice sounds over the phone.
Yes, yes. And I find what you're saying so relatable, and I'm sure many of members of our audience will as well, because as you rightly said, for many of us now, you don't get to have that face-to-face interaction all the time for people to really assess all that you're saying and how you're really trying to deliver. And you're definitely right. There's a lot to be said about the body and the tone, and I can't wait to
Uh-huh.
get into that part of it with you. So I'm excited, if you can't tell.
And
So,
if I may actually start with this, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
no,
you,
go
but
ahead.
for the rest of our talk today, there's one thing I want you to keep in mind, and that's something that's called the interpersonal gap. And I won't get too technical with it, but I'll just try to sum it up in a nutshell. Keep in mind, when I communicate, I'm not only taking words, but I'm taking my life experiences with me. So how my mother communicated, the type of school I went to, my
Mhm.
life experiences, all of that is in my head and helps shape how I communicate with others. Again, it's not just the words, it's my body language, my tone of voice, how high I talk. Maybe I talk like this, or how low I talk. Maybe I feel like I need to lower my pitch to sound like a stronger woman. So again, I'm coming with all of that experiences when I'm communicating with you, Alexanne. Now, once my words leave me and are out in the universe, you have your own experiences and things that you're decoding my words. So for me, I might speak slowly because I work with individuals who have communication deficits. So I might speak a little slower. I might place a few more pauses in my communication. Well, maybe a family member of yours spoke slowly because they thought that everyone else was beneath them. And they thought that other people had a lower education level, so they had to dumb things down. So me speaking slowly to you might be offensive, but to me, I'm trying to be helpful. And so that's that gap. Your experience and my experience are completely different. And unless you ask me directly, why do you speak that way, Shavonne? You would never know, like, oh, I speak this way because I'm used to speaking with people with aphasia or difficulty communicating. So,
That's really something. I'm glad you said that, because I think a lot of times we get caught up in our own interpretations, our own
mhm,
perceptions of what's happening. And I mean, that is natural, but
mhm,
to step back from that and think about what the other possibilities could be
mhm,
is a big deal. And I think it's a necessary step that we definitely have to try to infuse in our daily thought process in communications to
mhm.
ensure that we are bringing the charitable assumption, um,
Yes.
especially in customer service
Yeah.
settings. It will work out better for both parties if we give the charitable assumption. So I'm really happy you said that. I'm glad you brought that to bear.
Mhm,
Excellent. So I wanted to get deeper into it with you,
mhm,
um, and discuss, what you consider some important elements of communication that we need to focus on in our
mhm.
daily business life.
Okay. So for me, and I want to come to this from the perspective of not just someone who has experience communicating with general customers, but also someone who has experience communicating with people who may have communication deficits. So one thing I want to bring to light, I was thinking when I was preparing for this talk with you today, I thought back to a literature review I did when I was in school for my MBA. And of course, I came with it through the eyes of
Congrats.
a speech
Congrats to
therapist.
you. I have to
Oh,
interject.
thank
Go ahead.
you. And during this literature review, I came across an interesting statistic that there's approximately 50 million people in the US who have some sort of communication difficulty, whether that's difficulty hearing or difficulty expressing themselves, difficulty comprehending communication or your words, your written communication. And then there's another 50 million, about 50 million, who English might be their second language.
Mhm.
So, again, another thing just to keep in the back of your mind when we're communicating with people, just to understand that we may have to feel comfortable understanding how we communicate and how our communication might affect others who may not communicate in the same ways that we do.
Mhm.
So again, that's just something to keep in mind. And going back to we talked about as far as your customer and the pain points your customers might have and the experience they have from beginning to end. I remember one of my patients, he had Parkinson's, he has Parkinson's, excuse me. And he told me that one of his biggest fears is calling customer service. That is horrible for him. And so there was a situation where he had to call a customer service line, and for some reason, this company would not talk to his wife. He was the account holder. They would only speak to him. And, this grown man is telling me with almost tears in his eyes how horrible of an experience it was for him
Right.
because of his communication deficit and because the person on the other end of the line did not seem willing to allow him that grace and allow him that extra time to get out what he wanted to say. They were speaking too fast. They were speaking in a manner that he could not understand. And it was just a really hard experience for him.
Mhm.
And so think about that. You have a brand and someone calls you and it may be you. For me, I'm it. I'm I'm the secretary, I'm everything. But it might be you, it might be someone else. Imagine someone calling and that person drops the ball. That person might say, you know what? I'm going to go somewhere else because this is not the company for me. And
Yeah.
we don't want that.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right. And I'm glad you brought that example out because I don't think many of us think about it that way a lot of times. A
Mhm,
lot of times, the person who is answering sometimes, and we have to discuss this too in our
mhm,
sessions. It's like, allow the customer to get it out.
mhm,
Sometimes, as you are saying, which is I'm so happy you brought it out, they are having a difficulty. It's not because they're annoyed, it's not because they're distracted. They're just having a
mhm,
challenge right now.
mhm.
And another thing is, sometimes as a customer service personnel, we can make assumptions that we know what's going on with this
Right.
customer, and it's just not true. Yes, we are here, and you kind of get a feel for the questions that you normally get. And it's good that you kind of, you're understanding more what customers may have issues with, but there are nuances to everyone. So
Mhm.
it's better to allow them to get it all out before we interrupt. It also leaves
Yes.
a negative taste with them if they're being interrupted. And it can, waste time too. So allow
Mhm,
them to get it out so we're on the same page and then respond. So I think that's offering grace for whatever deficits there may be, as
mhm.
well as just being courteous to allow people to, if they're venting, whatever it is, get it out before we cut them off. I'm sure none of us like being cut off. So just allow people the opportunity to really get it out. And another thing you mentioned, even I'm just reflecting on what you said about your cadence, speaking slower. As a matter of fact, that's something that I had to work on because
Mhm.
for me, I was speaking quickly because I just wanted to get out. I was like, I don't want to take up too much of anyone's time. I might have a little fear around this encounter. So I'm
Mhm.
like, hurry up, hurry up. But yeah, I also learned to no, you have something to say. You're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to get it out in a way that will be coherent and cohesive to the person on the other side. So take your time, get it out, and go on. You have time. You have some time. So I can
Yes.
appreciate that as well. Yeah.
And I hope you don't mind me referencing my YouTube channel, but I have a
No,
little itty
no, go
bitty
ahead,
YouTube
of course.
channel. I have a set of videos on executive presence, right? And just in a nutshell, that's how you carry yourself, not just, again, not just your words, but how you carry yourself, and being seen as a leader and being seen as the expert, because you are. If you started a business or you're part of that customer service, you're the expert in that field. So you want people to see that in you. Anyways, but in this series, this executive president series, I talk about, you know, you mentioned about speaking slowly. And there are some people who speak too slowly, and there are some people who speak too fast. But really, it comes down to understanding your own personal communication style and not being afraid to record yourself. And that's something that I had to get used to, like recording myself. And one reason I started my YouTube channel is because I wanted to improve my communication skills. And in order to analyze that, I had to go through that cringy moment of listening to my voice, watching myself, think, oh my gosh, that's what I do when I talk. Or, oh my gosh, that's how I sound. You can learn so much about yourself, grab a friend, record yourself communicating, talking about either business related things or not. And you'd be surprised some things that you learn about your communication style that you just didn't realize.
I can totally relate. I can totally relate. Even yesterday, um, my aunt was watching some of the videos on the channel, and I was like, please, please no. And because I find myself doing exactly that. I am critiquing myself. And I mean, yes, it needs to be done for improvement. But at some point I'm like, I'm done for today.
Yeah.
I'm done with that for today. So you are so right. And
Yeah.
I did watch some of the videos in the executive leadership series that you have.
Oh yeah. What'd you
And
think?
it's good, great information. I encourage everyone to go over to Proclaim Services YouTube channel, check it out. Check it out. She has really good information that you can think about, it, implement, and use it over time. So go check it out.
Right.
All right. The next thing I wanted us to talk about was tone. And this one
Okay.
is so important to me because I find that in my world, people are really focused on, but I said this. I said these words. And I'm like, yeah, but how did you say the words?
Yes.
How did it come across? So you give us your perspective on tone.
Oh, that is a hard one. I've been thinking about this a lot since you mentioned this to me. There are people out there who communicate in different ways. So in general, you have people who are aggressive communicators, people who are passive communicators, people who are passive aggressive communicators. And again, sometimes it really just takes you listening to yourself a little more, or asking other people their opinion, people you trust, of course, their opinions and their thoughts on you, because sometimes we don't realize it. But there is a way to say things. You're right. I could, if I have a coworker and I'm dependent on a report from them, I can ask them, is that report going to be done by the end of the day? Or I can ask, is that report going to be done by the end of the day? I'm saying two different things, right? One, I'm
Yes.
just asking a question, is it going to be done so I can start my portion? Or I'm telling you that I don't think you're going to be done with that report.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have faith in you. But just I said the same words, but I had really two different meanings. Body language comes into play in that too.
Mm-hmm.
I know you said we'll talk about that later, but it kind of goes hand in hand.
Yes,
Sometimes
it does.
we say the words, but the tone and the body language, if my hand's on my hip and I'm asking, is that report going to be done by the end of the day? Then
Yes.
I got a little more sass in there.
Definitely. And there is something to be said about your body language, even when the person can't see you. A lot of that ends up translating through our
Translating
voice.
into, yes, it
So
does.
you have to act like someone is in front of you. A lot of times, even getting ready in a way that makes you feel like, okay, it's work time, helps your tone, your body
Mhm.
language, even your word selection.
Mhm.
So I think it is important for us to sit up straight, get into gear, know that it's work time, even if someone is not in front of you, and you're doing most of your communication over the phone. You make sure that your body is in line with what you're trying to convey, so it comes out
Yes,
that way. That's really key.
I love that. And then going back, I always bring things back to because again, first and foremost, I'm a clinician before I'm anything else. When we talk about voice and we talk about the systems we use, so we use our lungs. Our lungs are our powerhouse. They bring out the air. Our vocal folds filter that air to create the sound. Our mouths shape that sound to make the words. Now, going back to what you said, even when you're on the phone, you have to be careful with your body language. So if my shoulders are slouched, my chin is down, and I'm cutting off, and my structures can't move, then what's happening to my voice? My voice is going with it.
Mm-hmm.
I might have more rasp in my voice. I might sound a little more tired, a little more sleepy, because I'm not allowing my lungs, my vocal folds, my articulators to work in the way that they should if I sat up a little bit taller. One thing we don't realize, and some people do, but some people don't, our emotions affect how our voice sounds. So in my head, I might be upset about something. And for some people, when they're upset, their pitch gets higher.
Mm.
What did you say? Excuse me? Run that by me again? You know? And for
Yeah.
some of us, I'm the opposite actually. When I'm upset, my voice goes lower. Excuse me? You know? So, and we don't think about that. So if you're upset about something else, not related to the customer, maybe, or maybe related to the customer, you have to kind of regulate your emotions because your emotions change the tone of your voice. It's not always about the words you speak. If my tone and my pitch is raised, that other person is hearing that subconsciously, they're interpreting that raise in pitch as me being aggressive.
Yes, I am so glad you said that because I had to learn that too. And I don't even think I consciously did it. In my mind, I was thinking, I don't want to make my emotions from this situation happening over here
Mm-hmm.
affect this other situation that I have here. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just compartmentalized. I'm like, okay, I'm over here now, get back in gear. This person,
Yeah.
we didn't have any issues, right? And
Yeah.
I've tried to do that. It's not easy, but I
Mm-hmm.
definitely think it's something that we have to continue to practice until we
Yes.
can get it perfect. One of the things we discuss in our emotional balance course on at in CX Unlocked is how to get yourself back to a level playing field
Mm-hmm.
after a difficult interaction or even maintaining that during a difficult interaction. And we talk about having a quick fix. What can you do in the moment that will
Mm-hmm.
put you back where you need to be? And that varies for everyone, but determining what that is so you have it handy, as well as something that you do long term to
Mm-hmm.
maintain you, keep you stable, something you do every day to kind of, keep your cadence and keep your emotions level,
Mm-hmm.
I should say.
That's so important. Yes. So I'm
Yes,
glad
so
you have that resource for people because yeah, that's that mindfulness or that emotional intelligence. Like
yeah,
I know when
yeah.
I'm triggered, and this, and then my voice sounds different, and then I'm speaking in shorter phrases, and now I sound agitated. I am.
Yeah. And you end up creating problems that you didn't intend to.
Yes.
So it's one of the things that we try to drive home real hard because we know it's hard out here.
It's hard.
It's hard
So
out
I
here.
practice.
All right.
Um, okay. Now, I'd like us to get into word selection. At the beginning, you mentioned that a lot of our communication these days happens through the phone or email. Email being very predominant because a lot of us don't even like talking on the phones anymore, which is another reason people hate contacting customer service. But yeah, so I wanted us to talk about word selection. I know
Mhm.
for me, and it might be my background too, because you spoke about that. We're coming to it with all our experiences.
Mhm.
And my background is very formal.
Mhm.
So for me, sometimes it's my word choices don't reflect business casual or just a more, smooth type of flow. So I
Yeah.
have to be very mindful of the words that I use and try to switch it up a bit. But over to you on word choices and how that impacts our communication.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I notice a lot of organizations are doing, they're having their employees assess their communication styles, right? So you might have done a Myers-Briggs or what's the other Berkman or what are those things, and parts of that is what kind of style are you? What kind of communication style are you? In general, one thing is good to first understand your communication style first. And you can use some of these assessments, but like I mentioned before, in general, when we think of communicators, there are people who are aggressive communicators, passive, passive aggressive communicators, and just understanding where we fall in that spectrum of communicators. And then there's that other kind of category of assertive communicators. So I'll give you some examples that might bring it home. So I might be in a meeting with a bunch of individuals and I'm having a hard time getting in there, getting my voice heard. And I say, if I may interrupt, I think that possibly one thing we may want to consider is possibly doing this. Then what is that telling you, Alexanne, about
You
my
don't
thoughts?
sound very sure. You don't sound very confident about what you're saying.
Right. And then that's those word choices. I think
Mm-hmm.
maybe, possibly, if I may, you know, those word choices. And that may just come from my experience. Maybe that's the way I was taught to communicate growing up. Maybe that's my parents maybe didn't really want me interrupting. So maybe as an adult, I still hold on to that. Or I might say something like, well, that's ridiculous. If someone gives their opinion, that's ridiculous. Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's that aggressive communicator. And sometimes one thing that's my biggest pet peeve is that people who are aggressive communicators sometimes mistake themselves for just being, I'm just direct, or I'm just real. I just keep it real.
Yes.
No, you're rude.
I can definitely relate because a lot of times, I was told that I'm very blunt,
Hmm.
but I didn't know I was blunt. I
Hmm.
thought I was just answering the question. Like, you asked me something and I'm answering the question. So then I started to realize, the feedback I'm getting, not even verbal, but just the body language shift, or
Hmm.
how a conversation flow might change after my response. So
Hmm.
I started asking my friends about it. I'm like, do you feel, is there a certain feeling I'm giving you based on my response? And they're like, yes, but we understand you. So I was like, okay, but that means I need to fix something because
Hmm.
that's not what I'm trying to do. So there must be
Hmm.
a better way for me to say exactly what I'm thinking, but without causing that negative emotion in the person on the other end. So I had to learn
Right.
that too.
Yeah, it's really about intent, right? What's the real intent? And I just wanted to be clear, it's okay to be direct, and for in some situations it's okay to be blunt to a point. Of course, when you're dealing with a lot of different people with different communication styles, they may not understand you. Again, going back to that interpersonal gap, you may not understand them, and so that leaves things up to interpretation.
Yes, which doesn't always go how we want it
Right.
to.
Yeah, so there's that difference between, maybe I'm a no nonsense person. I get straight to the point, and that is okay. And I'm not saying that it's not okay to be that. What I'm saying is more of when what you're saying can be hurtful or harmful to someone else's well-being, then that's when
Mhm.
we have to say, okay, you're not just keeping it real. You're mean. Let's work on that.
Yes. Yes, 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 I totally agree. I totally agree. And are there any are there any suggestions you would have to help us to um change our word
Mhm.
choices?
Right. And so going back to recording yourself, that's always the best way. Ask permission for whoever you're speaking with. Like, can I record myself while I'm talking to you and really assess what I'm saying? Is what I'm saying mean spirited or could be interpreted as mean spirited, or am I coming off as not very confident? You really want to aim to be what we call an assertive communicator. So, what that is someone who feels confident speaking up for themselves, feels comfortable expressing their opinions and thoughts, but in a clear way. So an assertive an assertive communicator, might say something like, I want you to know that this is my opinion, or I believe that we should do X, Y, and Z
Mhm.
versus I think or maybe we should, or being that aggressive person who's like, well, this is how we're going to do it because this is the best way.
Mhm.
So it's finding
Yes.
that
Yeah.
finding that middle ground, understanding that win-win kind of mentality. Whereas I understand you have thoughts and opinions, and I respect that, but I also want my thoughts and opinions to be respected as well.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you gave that example because within the customer experience,
Mm,
we also have to think about how we engage with our staff members. And the example that you
mhm,
just gave is a typical situation that many people face.
mhm,
So it is good, as you're saying, to be direct, but how, what's the best way to
mhm.
communicate this without causing disruptions in the team? Or should I say unnecessary
Yes.
disruptions within the team? So I'm happy that you gave that example. And it,
Mhm,
it leads me to thinking about differences in how we may want to communicate with our employees or
mhm.
coworkers as opposed to persons who are coming to engage our business or external customers who want to buy from us. Is there anything we should be keeping in mind?
Yes. So it's different because when you're spending every day with someone or most of your week with someone, you have that opportunity to say, okay, I know what this person generally does, generally says, but when someone's coming off the street, you don't have that time to say, okay, what's your communication style? You know, let's see if our communication styles match. You don't have that opportunity. I think active listening is the number one key when someone's coming in off the street or someone's calling you. And I think you spoke about that before, just really understanding what their needs are is so important when you're dealing with someone that you just don't know.
Mhm.
And I'll give you an example. Uh, it wasn't a great situation, but I, as a clinician, worked for someone else at one point, and a family member of someone I was going to evaluate, an older gentleman, his daughter called and spoke to the first person. I'm gonna say the first person that you call to schedule your
Yes.
appointment, and she wanted to make sure a certain information about her dad was passed along, and she wanted to make sure communication with her dad was done in a certain manner. Well, that information did not get to me, and we had an issue. And so this lady, I don't know how she found my personal number. I have no idea
Oh,
how she
wow.
found my personal
When they
number.
want to find you, when they're upset, so they can find you.
She called me. I was driving. She left a message. I heard the message. She was very upset. The message she left let me know she was very upset about a situation that happened with her father. And so then, going back to what we said about, not coming in with preconceived notions, I had to make sure that I didn't jump to conclusions. and I regulated my emotions. We talked about that. I had to regulate my emotions because I could have jumped in and said, well, I didn't know. No one told me.
Mhm.
That's not my fault, you know, which is my biggest pet peeve is it's not my fault and it's not my job. Two
Uh-huh.
things you should never tell a customer.
Yes, yes, because not to interrupt your story, I want us to get
Yeah.
back to it, but you're making a valid point. As a customer, you see the business as one business. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care which area you work in, so get me the solution. Don't tell me it's not
Right.
you. Like, no, you're just making it worse.
Right. I could have made it so much worse if I told her that's not my job, that,
Yeah.
that wasn't me, not my fault.
Yeah.
So really, again, I had to regulate my emotions when I came into this conversation. I didn't know the background of what happened at this point when she called me. I didn't know that I was supposed to know X, Y, and Z. I
Mhm.
didn't know. So instead of having my preconceived notions about, oh, she's going to say this, she's going to do that, I just came in with a blank slate. I called her back and I let her talk. She talked for a while. Luckily, it was the end of the day. I had to get to someone else. But I let her talk. I let her get out her frustrations. And, I found out a couple of things that I just did not know. And I heard some things and I was able to give an empathic response. So she was talking about, she briefly mentioned that, I have to pick up my daughter and, now I have to worry about this with my father. And it's just so much. And so, I told her, gosh, it must be so hard. You have your own family to deal with. And
Mhm.
now your father gave you so much support growing up, and now your roles are being reversed. And now you have to try to take care of your family and take care of your parents. I can't imagine what that feels like. And just me giving her that empathy, her tone changed.
Mhm.
She saw her tone softened over the phone. And she's like, yeah, that's exactly it. I'm dealing with so much. I'm trying to keep my family together, but I'm also trying to take care of my parents. And it's hard. It's so hard.
Mhm.
And when things go wrong, I just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So now, okay,
Now
now
you're on the
I'm on her
same side.
side. Yeah, okay, now I'm on her side. I understand her. I get her feelings. And I told her I'm sorry. And then, at times we don't want to say that. We don't want to admit
Mhm.
guilt. That's that bad word. You never say you're sorry. But I didn't say, I'm sorry that that person didn't relay the message. I just told her, I'm sorry that you're experiencing this, and I'm sorry things happen this way. I'm going to go back to my coworker. We're going to talk about the system that we have for relaying messages. And I'm going, I can't undo what happened,
Mhm.
but I can tell you that we can try to make it better from here on out.
Yeah.
And she decided to see, because the first thing she said to me on that phone call was, I'm thinking about going with another rehab company. You guys are so unprofessional. And by the end of the conversation, she said, well, thank you. I appreciate that. When's the next time my father can come see you?
Yeah. See, I love that. I love that. And I'm so glad you shared because I do think people need to realize that that's what customers want. Let's think
Mm-hmm.
about just our own selves. We know that things can go wrong. We know that things can go wrong, but
It
we
happens.
want to know that we can trust this company, that when things go wrong, they're going to make it right. They're going to do
Mm-hmm.
their very best to make it right by us. They want to be able to trust. They want to know that they're heard. They want to know that you actually care about what's going on. And it just
Mm-hmm.
takes active listening and meeting them at their point of need. And I said, just like it's something simple. It's not. It's not. It's hard to do, especially when you don't have just one customer.
Right.
But that is what it takes. So I'm so
Mm-hmm.
happy you shared that experience.
Definitely. And hopefully keep your fingers crossed. I'm hoping to have another video. I'm not a great YouTuber. I apologize. But I'm hopefully the next few weeks I'm going to have a video up about active listening, what that is and what the steps are to improve your listening skills and improve your ability to give that customer, or that is not even customer, maybe your loved one, maybe your coworker, that experience that they're looking for, and to deepen relationships. So I'll get that up
Yes, I'll
someday.
be looking out for that one. I'll be looking out for that one. So make sure it's there.
I'll get it.
Um, Thank you so much for your time. Before we close out this spike chat, I'd like to just know if there's anything new coming up for you, anything else we should look out for from Proclaim Services. Um, so we can always stay in touch and we can be looking out for all the good things that you have for us.
I think the best way, see, I did it again. I think, Cassidy, the best way to communicate with me and to stay up on what I'm doing is on LinkedIn. And so I don't know if I can just maybe share that LinkedIn link with you, Alex, and
Yes,
then you can
definitely.
maybe
We'll
paste
have it
it.
in the, what is it, the description box.
Sure, yeah. LinkedIn is the best way. Subscribe to my YouTube channel because I'm working on that active listening series. I might make it just one video, who knows? But I'm working on that. So stay tuned to that. And that's it. And this was fun. I really enjoyed
It
this.
was. I'm so happy we got to do it. And um, I know it will be of great value to anyone who watches. Spike fam, thanks for joining us. That was fabulous. I had a lot of fun if you couldn't tell. um, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Getting on my YouTube game. And check the description box for other ways to connect with Spike. And of course, with Proclaim Services with Shavonne, we'll link her YouTube channel and her LinkedIn as well. I'm looking forward to working with more of you and bringing you valuable content that you can use in your business journey. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you soon.